The tires crunched against the gravel road as Michael Turner's truck climbed higher into the mountains. The air grew thinner, cleaner, colder. Pines crowded the roadside, their needles whispering secrets to the wind. He lowered the window and inhaled. It smelled like freedom and a little bit like loneliness. After 30 years of city noise and deadlines, this was supposed to be peace. A place to breathe again. A place to start over. The mountain didn't care about mortgages, deadlines, or grief. It stood still, eternal, unmoved by anything human. Michael smiled as a cabin appeared around a bend, small, weathered, and covered in years of neglect, but beautiful. The chimney leaned slightly, moss wrapped around the stones like green velvet, and sunlight glinted off the old tin roof. It wasn't much, but it was his. He parked the truck and just sat there for a moment, watching the wind move through the tall grass. "This is it," he whispered. He could almost hear Anna's voice, soft teasing. "Finally, Mike." A home above the clouds. His late wife had always dreamed of living somewhere high and quiet. After losing her 2 years ago, he'd nearly drowned in the noise of the city. Selling their house, buying this mountain property, fixing it up, it was supposed to be his way of healing, his way of talking to her again. He stepped out, boots crunching on gravel, and stretched. The air stung his lungs in the best way. The world up here sounded different, sharper, purer. He grabbed his tool bag from the truck and walked toward the porch. The steps creaked beneath him. He ran a hand along the old railing. "We'll fix you up," he said softly. But then he froze. Smoke. It was faint but real, a thin line curling from the chimney. His stomach tightened. That wasn't possible. He'd bought the place from the county. The real estate agent told him it had been empty for years. Michael stepped closer, careful, listening. Inside the cabin, something moved, a muffled thump, then voices. A door slammed. He turned toward the sound just as it opened. A woman stepped out, late 50s, maybe early 60s. Short blonde hair, sharp eyes, hands on her hips. "What do you think you're doing here?" she barked. Michael blinked. "Excuse me?" I said, "What are you doing on my property?" "Your property?" She pointed a finger like it was a weapon. "Yes, my family's lived here for months." "You're trespassing." Behind her, 2 figures appeared. A thick-set man in his 60s, wearing a flannel shirt, and a younger guy, maybe mid-30s, arms crossed, glaring. Michael took a slow breath. "Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I just bought this place. Legally." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. "Here's the deed." She didn't even look at it. "Fake," she snapped. "This house belonged to my grandparents. We've been taking care of it for years." Michael frowned. "Then why did the county list as abandoned?" The man, Greg, she called him later, stepped forward, his shadow falling across the porch. "You should leave. Now." Michael stood his ground, not without answers. The woman crossed her arms. "My name's Karen, and this isn't for you to take." That name, Karen, it fit her tone perfectly, that hard, entitled certainty, like the world bent around her sense of ownership. Michael exhaled slowly. "Look, I don't want any trouble, but this place is mine." Karen's lip curled. "We'll see about that." He spent that night in his truck, parked a few hundred feet down the road. The cabin glowed warm through the trees, his home, but not his anymore. Inside, laughter floated out, muffled but cruel. When he woke the next morning, the truck sagged to one side. 3 tires slashed, the 4th deflated. On the porch, a note nailed to the railing. "Leave. You don't belong here." He sat in silence for a long time. The forest was too quiet, like it was holding its breath. By noon, he reached the sheriff's office in town. The man behind the counter, gray-bearded and slow-moving, barely looked up from his paperwork. "So they moved it before you?" the sheriff asked. "Yes," Michael said, "but I have proof I own the place." He placed the papers on the desk. The sheriff sighed. "Look, sir, if they're claiming it's theirs too, that's a civil dispute. You'll need to go through the courts." "That could take months," Michael said, frustration tightening his throat. "They're living there illegally. They vandalized my truck. Then file an insurance report. Best I can tell you." Michael left the office shaking with anger. By evening, he'd arranged a tow for the truck and checked into a rundown motel near the base of the mountain. The room smelled like cigarettes and mildew, but it gave him time to think. He sat on the bed, staring at the ceiling. They'd stolen his peace, and he wasn't going to let them keep it. The next few days were a blur. Of phone calls, lawyers, real estate agents, county offices. His lawyer, a calm, measured man named Harris, reassured him that the paperwork was airtight. "They're squatters," Harris said. "It's cut and dry, but you'll need evidence." So Michael gathered it. At dawn, he hiked up the back trail, camera in hand, moving through the cold air like a ghost. The sun barely touched the valley yet. Birds stirred above him. Every branch snap made his pulse jump. He crouched behind a fallen log and watched his own cabin. Smoke drifted from the chimney again. Karen's voice carried faintly through the stillness. "Check the fence line," she was saying. "Make sure that sign's still up." Her son walked out with a hammer and a fresh wooden plank. He nailed a hand-painted board into ground. "Private property, and no trespassing." Michael's jaw clenched. He filmed everything. The fake signs, the damage, even Greg burning his mail in a barrel out back. Every shot made his hands tremble harder. When Greg spotted him near the tree lean, the air changed. "Hey!" Greg's voice cut through the wind. Michael stepped back. Greg marched toward him, fury on his face. "You spying on us?" "Just collecting what's mine," Michael said evenly. Greg stopped inches from him. "You think you can come here and take what's ours?" "I don't think," Michael replied quietly. "I know." Greg shoved him. Michael stumbled but didn't fall. He met the man's eyes and said, steady as stone, "Touch me again and I'll make sure you regret it." For a second, the forest was silent except for the wind whispering through the needles. Then Greg turned and walked away, muttering. That night, Michael sat by the riverbank near the base of the mountain. The moon rippled across the water. He could hear Anna again. "Don't let them win, Mike. That's not the man I married." He closed his eyes. "I won't," he whispered. The next day, he met a man named Earl, a retired park ranger with eyes like granite and a handshake that still carried the strength of a lifetime outdoors. Earl listened to the story in silence, then nodded slowly. "They've done this before," he said. "Scared off a couple from the next ridge last year. Never got caught." Earl leaned back. "If you're serious about fighting this, I'll help." Together, they planted small wildlife cameras around the property, one near the driveway, one by the porch, one hidden behind a boulder overlooking the backyard. The footage came fast. Karen's family dumping trash down the hillside. Greg chopping down trees that weren't theirs. The sun spray painting Michael's truck again when it was finally towed back up the road. Michael's lawyer filed everything. County officials started investigating, and that's when the threats began. Late one night, someone pounded on his motel door. By the time he opened it, no one was there, but his truck's windshield was cracked in two. The message scratched into the hood said it all. "Go home." Michael laughed bitterly. "I am home." The battle stretched for weeks. Paperwork, police visits, tempers, fear. Then one morning, the call came. Mr. Turner, his lawyer said, voice tight with satisfaction. "The county verified your deed. Sheriff's Department is sending an officer to enforce eviction today." Michael drove up with his heart pounding. Earl followed behind. The sheriff and two deputies waited at the gate, documents in hand. The air was electric. Karen stood on the porch, arms folded, rage burning in her eyes. "You can't do this," she shouted as the deputies approached. The sheriff held up the deed. "Ma'am, the property belongs to Mr. Turner." "This is harassment," she shrieked. "This land's been ours since my granddaddy." "Then you'll need to take it up with the court," the sheriff said evenly. "But as of today, you're trespassing." Greg threw his hands up. "We ain't leaving." "Then you'll be arrested." Silence. Karen's son slammed the screen door. "You can't kick us out of our home." The sheriff took a slow step forward. "Watch me." The scene played out like slow motion. Karen screamed. Greg cursed. One of the deputies stepped between them. And through it all, Michael stood still, calm, resolute, watching the storm break. Minutes later, it was over. Karen's family packed what they could. As they drove away, Greg leaned out of the window, shouting something that the wind stole away. When the dust settled, Michael walked to the cabin's open door. The air smelled of ash and mold. Furniture overturned. Windows shattered. Floorboards torn out in rage. He sank to his knees in the middle of the living room. For a long time, he didn't move. Then he whispered, "They took everything they could, but not this." The next weeks were quiet. He rebuilt, hammered new planks, painted the porch, repaired what they'd broken, one nail at a time. Sweat dripped. His hands blistered. His back ached. But for the first time in years, the ache felt right. It meant he was alive again. The mountain air grew colder. Autumn rolled in, gold leaves spinning through sunlight. He finished the roof just before the first snow. That night, a storm swept over the ridge. Wind howled through the trees. Rain hammered the roof like a heartbeat. Michael sat by the fire, coffee steaming beside him, the warmth soaking into his bones. He lifted a framed photograph of Anna, placed it on the mantel, and smiled. "We did it, sweetheart," he whispered. "We came home." Outside, lightning cracked across the valley. Thunder rolled like applause from the heavens. He stepped onto the porch, the wind whipping his hair, the scent of pine sharp and clean. The valley below shimmered under rain. The world was his again, raw, alive, and honest. And for the first time since she'd gone, he felt peace. He took a long breath, eyes on the horizon. "I learned something up here," he said quietly, voice barely louder than the storm. "Sometimes peace isn't given. You fight for it. You bleed for it. You rebuild it." The clouds parted. A ray of morning light touched the mountain peak, golden and pure. And when the world tries to take what's yours, your home, your name, your soul, you stand your ground. He smiled softly, because in the end, that's what home really means. He stepped back inside as the fire crackled, the photograph glowing in its light. The screen faded to black, his voice lingering like an echo in the wind. "So, what would you do," he asked, "if someone claimed your home was theirs?" A pause. Maybe the answer's simple. Fight for it, with truth and with heart.